What a friend we have in Jesus, all our sins and griefs to bear. And what a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer. Oh, what peace we often forfeit. Oh, what needless pain we bear. All because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. And have we trials and temptations? Is there trouble anywhere?
My name is Tunica Durden Tucson. This is our story. It was not a luxury that we deserved. It was a right we had to fight for. And we want to tell you about our father, Reverend Freeman Durden, his father, Reverend Freeman Richard Charles Durden, and his mother, Isabella. The Durden birthplace was Mound Bayou, Mississippi, and the year was 1909. We survived to tell the tale, and we are given the opportunity today to allow our history to repeat itself for our future.
My name is Tunica Tucson. I have 3 girls and 1 gorgeous son. I was born in Tunica, Mississippi, which is 40 miles below Memphis, Tennessee, and I was born in my grandmother's home in Tunica. My mother would normally go home each time that she had a baby. And my father was a professor. My mother was a teacher. My grandmother was a teacher. On my mother's side, my aunt was a teacher also, and we were a family that believed in education. The first time I walked home from school alone was when we lived in Harrisburg, Kentucky. And the school was on the other side of town, and the black kids went to the black school and the white kids went to the white school. No, we walked through semi-wood. It was like a country town. It was kind of scary, but we played and we had fun. And sometimes my brothers would get into fights on their way home. My brothers, Frank. We were new in town, and every time that we moved to, the kids, they wanted to start a fight. So we would retaliate by fighting with them. Well, my mother and father did not approve of it, because my father was a minister in the town. My first day in school was in Harrisburg, Mississippi. And we lived next door to the school, and I did not like going to school. So I cried, and my mother had to come up to the school and take me home. I was in a strange place, and I had never been there before. Where we were living, it was only black people, and the white people lived downtown where the main part of the city was, and the black people lived out kind of like in the suburbs.
My name is Freeman Durden Jr., and I have 4 kids, 2 boys, 2 girls, a couple of grandkids, and several great-grandkids. I was born in Tunica, Mississippi, and I lived in Tunica, Mississippi until I was about 6 years old. Because when I was born, my mother was sick. I was born sickly, and they said that I probably wouldn't live to be 1 year old. They gave my mother a medication to give me. It had to be given at the right time, the right doses, otherwise I would die. By her being sick herself, she couldn't take me home with her. So I had to stay with my grandmother. My grandmother was a school teacher, and so I stayed there until I was about 6 years old. And went to school with my grandmother went fishing with her and everything else. But then after that, I went home. My mother then took me back home because she could do it then. And I don't know really, but the feel was my father had a friend who had a son that died from, of course, they consider it to be the same thing I had.
Were you a premature baby?
Huh?
You could have probably was a premature baby.
Well, years later they said that they thought it was some kind of a nervous disorder. Yeah. But everything worked out for me. I got to be big old AO, so worked out for me.
That's a blessing.
But one of the things I remember from Tunica, Mississippi was the fact that there was a black boy who had a mother and father, a mother and grandmother that lived across the street from my grandmother. And he lived in Chicago. But he came down to Tunica to visit his mother and grandmother. And he went down to a Reinhardt drugstore in Tunica to get some medication for his grandmother. And a white girl in the store said she liked him. That he was a nice looking boy, she liked him. And because she said that, the Ku Klux Klan paid him a visit that evening. And they were looking for him, they couldn't find him. When they did find him, they hung him right in front of my grandmother's house.
Keep your hand on that plow and hold on. Hold on.
And that right there made a big impression on me for the rest of my life. But even in the old South, I had a lot more experience. Yeah. Well, one thing too, we were taught as black boys how to deal with white people if you want to be alive, you know. And anywhere I went, I didn't want to do it, but you had to say yes sir and no sir. And you couldn't look the white guy in the face. Get the whole head done. Yes sir, ball, no sir, ball. And me, it was kind of scary for me because I didn't want to do it. But
You remember not doing it?
yeah, my father had a newspaper, the Church Herald, and when I wasn't in school, he'd take me with him everywhere he went. And he was down in Texas to get the newspaper printed with the print shop. And some white guy was saying something to me, and he didn't like the way I spoke back to him. So he grabbed me up. I'm going to take me outside. I don't know what he was going to do. He was trying to kill me. But the only thing that paid me was the guy who owned the printing press. I told him, he said, no, that's the Reverend boy. And that paid me. Yeah. I had the same problem once in the same school where that boy went to, and it was that white girl and got killed. Yeah, I used to go to the store here. And they, if you were black and you was in line, when a white person came to the store to get something, you'd stand back and let them go first. And you just had to wait there. Well, being hard-headed, I didn't want to do it. So once again, I almost got paranoid. But the thing that saved me that time was the fact that they knew Daddy, you know, so they let me go. I didn't want to get back in the back of the line. That's what you had to do. Because if you was in the store first, the white person came to get something, you'd just wait. Now I did right in the back of the bus.
Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. Over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my own grave and go home to my Lord and be free. No more weeping, don't you know? No more weeping. No more weeping over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my own grave and go home to my Lord and be free.
And things like that made a great impression on me, you know. When I went in school and my father had a newspaper, we traveled all over the old South. You know, and it was just rough, tough. Down in New Orleans, Arkansas, you know. They had like 2 or 3 black top professional blacks that they would let vote. But no other black could vote. No other black could vote. Like I need to say about Granddad here in the library in house. A lot of professional blacks here in the library in the house. You know what? You couldn't go to the library. You couldn't go to the library and get no books or nothing. You could go to the library and get home, but you couldn't go to. You know that's what happened with John Lewis. He went to the library to get a card. They gave him a card, I was a beating on the head. Yeah, well, at the same library, probably a lot of black people even got library cards because they could do it now, but partly because of him suffering from that, you know. You went to the library, just get a library card, they didn't know, you can't get no library card. That couldn't go to the library. Now what you could do, sometimes you had a friend, somebody, they could go to the library and get a book for you or something. You couldn't go yourself. You couldn't do nothing as a black person, but stay in your place.
My name is Roy K. Durden. I'm 73 years old. I'm 6th in the line of all the Reverend and Mrs. Durden children. I've been married. I'm married to Earlene, a maiden named Galloway Durden, and we've been married November be 53 years. And we have 9 grandchildren and I think 13 great-grandchildren. And I live in the city of Rockford, and also I'm a minister now too for over 40 years. I was born in Leland, Mississippi, and what the coincidence was, I was born on a street called Church Street in Leland, Mississippi. I remember we moved a lot from city to city, and sometimes we moved every year, sometimes every 2 years. It was, we had a lot of good times, but there were some difficult times that some of the family members spoken of. We went to different schools, so we had to find our place within the school system with the other kids. We all loved sports and we played sports, so that made it even extra hard because they didn't want you to take their spot on the basketball team or the football team, baseball, whatever it was. Then we also had to deal with the kids within the church, because before Daddy would always go ahead of us and look at the church, tell us where we were moving. They would ask, how many kids do you have? Well, we have 6 of them. 1 girl and 5 boys. And so, therefore, when we went to the church, we had to deal with the kids in the church, because they said, well, here's a preacher that moved to town with 5 boys. So that made it difficult. And then whatever community that we lived in, we had to deal with the kids in the community. And so that's why we ended up in fights a lot. And it carried on, to quite a few cities and things like that. And then with me, it kind of changed my behavior. And then when I was coming up, I was red. I mean, real red, and had red hair. And back then, a lot of the older people equated that with being a devil. Anything that was red, the devil was red. So when I was a little boy, I remember even the older people would call me a devil, and I didn't understand it. And so it did something to me. And well, matter of fact, it made me have a lot of resentment. It really did. It made me have a lot of resentment. And that's why I deal with kids and things different today, and that's another. I remember when I was in the suburbs of Cincinnati, Daddy was pastoring a small church called Queen Chapel. It's a big church now. And I would, in school, and matter of fact, I was in the office quite a bit. And during that time, they would whoop you, like my sister was saying, with a paddle. But it seemed like they would look at me in a different light. And so here go that little red devil getting in trouble again. So I remember the principal would take a paddle like this big with holes in it and would whoop me, but I wouldn't say anything to my mother or my father. So one day, his name was Mr. Borninger. I never will forget his name. I wish I could find him today. But so anyway, Mr. Borninger was whooping me with this big paddle. This teacher, her name was Miss Barnett. But before all of that, down in Mississippi, I can't remember exactly where we were. They probably remember when I got my thumb cut off. Doing cartwheels on the grass, and I got my thumb cut off. They actually sewed it back on. They did a good job. I ain't had no trouble out of it. I still could fight with it and everything else. And so my mother didn't want me to play any sports or anything, because she said, well, his hand is hurt, and she figured that if I caught a ball or anything like that, that I'd hurt myself, which she was a good mother, and she was just concerned, about my way of being. And so I remember in Glendale, I was in elementary school, I believe in the 5th grade. And I wouldn't talk in class or anything. And Miss Barnett, one day they called me in the office, Mr. Bourne, you pull that big thing out, and he would hit me, but I wouldn't cry. I would just bend over and let him hit me. And then it did, you know, and I would think about it. So one day he would call me and they'll pull my pants up like this by the belt, and he was whooping me with this paddle. Miss Barnett saw it, and she said, wait a minute, don't you hit him like that anymore. This is what she said to the principal. And she said, he's not a bad kid. So they label him as a bad kid. So the other kids are doing way more than what Shed was my name.
Hi, my name is Henrietta Durden. My maiden name is Henrietta Durden. I'm married to Frank Durden, Sr., and we've been married 56 years. My husband passed away on September 28th last year, 2019. I came to talk about him to represent him. He's with us. And we have 5 children, numerous grandchildren, and great grandchildren. I met him actually in church the first time. His father was a traveling minister that came to pastor at the AME church here. And our church was visiting theirs. And I remember the first thing about him is him like catching my eye and like waving at me in church. And I'm trying to be like very pious, and he looked good. And I looked back. The second time I met him was at our party that we went to. And he started talking. One thing led to another. I told him I wasn't allowed to court. And back then, used to say I wasn't allowed to court anybody because I was too young. And he said, okay. I know I came home from school one day. He's sitting there talking to my mother, who is very religious. And they were sitting there talking about the Bible. I'm a nervous wreck, but I saw what he was doing, because when he left, I said, "That's a good boy. Now that's the kind of boy I want you to date." So I knew he had wormed his way in, and we started dating, and one thing led to another. We got married, and I met his family, his mother and father. Right after we got married, we stayed with them for a while until we moved. But they were very good people. They, from the moment I married him, they treated me. His father called me daughter. We were together for life, 56 years. It's very important. Family is important. With the Durdens, it's all about family. Family fights, period. This family. And I say that in a good way, because like one of the things I learned about when him and I were courting and soon after our marriage, they fought a lot. And a lot of it was from them being raised up in, different towns, Mississippi and Kentucky and all that. And he told me a lot of stories about, almost every school he went to, he had to fight. They all had to fight. The one thing about those brothers, they fought together. And one time he came up to my school to walk me home from school. And this was before we were married. And there was a big fight. When I'm standing there waiting for him to come get me, somebody said, "There's some boys fighting around the corner." And I'm like, "Who?" He said, "It's them new Durden boys." And sure enough, boy, they was all up there fighting. I mean, they was tearing up. They had the whole school and they was beating everybody up. They was people were running back and forth. Roy was in it. Even Decatur, and he was the baby. He had him fighting too. So that's just, and I learned soon. That's what they do. They fight because they came up fighting, you know, for their place in life, and they fight to the end. So.
Well, we were the new people in town.
You always, that's what
Every
I said,
time
right.
we were moved, we had to go to the town and let them know who was boss.
You had to put your place there and make your statement, and after that, nobody knows.
So Mama was in there fighting too, because Mama act like she was 5 years.
Tell me about. She was married when me and my husband got married, and so I got to meet her afterwards.
She should look it up.
She was married and was starting her own family, but they used to tell me about her. They used to call her the cat, and there was a reason why they called her the cat. They say because she didn't take her stuff.
Tell us the
Fought
story
like a
about the
cat.
cat.
He used to just tell me that, you know, that she didn't take anything. You know, he said she was real tough and she would fight one of them. Because, you know, anybody give her any lip, she made it known that she was not weak because she would not care. And they respected her and they loved her, and by her being the only girl, they were very protective of her. So they didn't even try to fight her back. I mean, they knew that. But, you know, she would let them know who was the boss. They, you know, wasn't going to win. Yeah, we had a lot of love.
A lot of left hooks, it sounds like. Mama.
Yeah.
Tell me about Mr.
He started getting sick. He died from liver illness. He had cirrhosis of the liver, and his Frank would be the loving, playful father. You know, he'd teach him how to fight and, you know, do things like that. And in sports, he taught him football, basketball, baseball. They were all good in sports because, you know, and wrestling. Being a Durden, it's almost like a requirement because they took pride, you know, in their manliness. They took pride in that, and all of them raised their boys up to be. Everybody know the Durden name, you know, in Rossville. He was always making fun of people that he loved them, but he would imitate. He was a really good imitator. He could imitate somebody's voice and the way they act and stuff, like, you know. And
Give me an example.
Oh, I can't do it, but I got a son that could imitate everybody just like him, you know. It's Jason. But they would. He would imitate people, and they used to call him, there was a movie I used to watch called Penitentiary, and he loved that movie, and he'd watch it over and over again, and he started imitating this guy named Selden, which is an old man here with white hair and stuff, you know, and so Frank would imitate him all the time, so everybody started calling him Selden. And we, like I said, we got a good supportive family. This family, he's got a big family, and especially Freeman calls at least twice a week and say, how are you doing? Do you need anything? And yeah, Decatur calls and checks. Arnethia is always, well, she usually calls to tell me when there's a gospel program. There's good gospel singing on channel on BET. And then I turn it on, you know, to her, you know, BET and listen to the gospel songs and stuff like that. And Roy, he was right down the street from us. And so him and his wife, Berlin. She was there when Frank was towards his last. He came to see me every day, and she'd stay with me, and she'd sit and pray with me. She'd hold me, and she was a big help to me.
And then I had the honor to preach his funeral.
Yes.
His eulogy.
This was good having a preacher in the family, because he not only preached his funeral, Roy came, and he prayed for him all the time. Him and his son, who I believe is his next minister in training, Roselle, they'd come, and they worked as a team. They were all still Mr. Frank. First, I tell him how much I love him and I miss him, and I'm not complete without him.
They say that the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. Harvey McAdory was the eldest son of Camilla Johnson, and he was born November 26, 1928 in Tunica, Mississippi. The life of Harvey McAdory were the things that legends was made of. We called him Uncle Harvey. Uncle Harvey lived in a shack with his grandmother and 10 other people. And Uncle Harvey took care of everybody in his family. They had outhouses, but very little electricity, and very few of them homes had running water. Back in the 80s, blacks lived in severe poverty. I never understood how in the 80s my family still lived like that. But they lived almost as if they were slaves. In Tunica, Mississippi, the sewers ran through the front yard of the residents' homes, and they called it the sugar ditch. I remember that Jesse Jackson traveled to Tunica, Mississippi in the 80s just to address this horrible problem. Uncle Harvey was the hardest working man any of us had known. He used to dig the graves of his family members. Back then, blacks had their own cemetery, so they had to do all the work. And he took it upon himself to make sure that his family had the best of homegoings. He had an opportunity many times to travel up north, but he wanted to make sure he stayed with his mother and his siblings. He never left his grandma Gilly and her auntie Delilah's side. There is a museum right now called the Tunica Museum. My grandma Gilly, Aunt Delilah, and my grandmother Camilla's names are mentioned in that museum for operating one-room schoolhouses in different quadrants in Tunica. Uncle Harvey married a woman named Lily Mae, and she preceded him in death. Harvey and Lily Mae had 11 children, 5 boys and 6 girls. The Lord blessed them with 22 grandchildren and 29 great-grandchildren. He loved his children and he loved God, and because of the love for us, he took care of his family. He taught us that family was first and to always do what was right. My family will tell you it was the Lord that provided for them, keeping food on the table and a roof over their head. Thank you, Uncle Harvey, for reminding us that love is hard work. And love is not a house. It's a home filled with the people worth fighting for.
My father was Douglas MacArthur Durden. He was 74 years old, born September 24th. And he was the 5th oldest of all the kids, of all his brothers.
Douglas was born in Tunica, Mississippi. He was born on September the 24th, 1945. He attended Princeton High School in Glendale, Ohio. In high school, he played football. He was an exceptional player. He also took up boxing. He married a beautiful woman named Ann and had 2 sons and 3 daughters. Although Douglas and Ann's marriage ended in divorce, Doug did remarry. Douglas married a woman named Rita Marshall, and they had a son. Douglas was a kind and generous soul. I remember when me and my children had to live with Douglas and his family for a short time. He made sure that me and my children were provided for and felt safe and at home. He was a kind and thoughtful person, and he loved life. He loved his children with all of his heart. And when sickness finally came to claim his time here on earth, he was surrounded by friends and family. Like all of those who have gone on before him, we wish he could have stayed a little longer. Being the youngest means there are some stories you will never be able to tell. But they replay over and over in your mind like dreams and visions. I want to take a moment to share a testimony of triumph in the face of adversity that our little brother Decatur experienced. Oh, he proved to be quite the fighter in his own right. He persevered and endured some pretty painful experiences in his life and suffered through some wrongs that weren't of his own design. I remember a time we had to live for a short season with our great-grandfather, Reverend Freeman Durden. He was newly married to his second wife, Miss Sally, and she didn't take kindly to all these children living in her home. One day, finding little Decatur underfoot, she took it upon herself to punish his innocence by severely scalding his legs with hot water. He nearly lost his leg that day. And where some of us may have thought this to be the end of Decatur's story, it proved to only be the beginning. As is the Durden way, he fought through the mindset that his loss would prevent him from ever being anything more than a burden. He excelled in sports and activities and even earned himself a seat in the Hall of Fame for basketball, proving to be an outstanding player. It is with this last addition to our family that I proudly insert this badge of honor in the Durden family history books.
My name is Decatur Durden Sr. I live in Cincinnati, Ohio. I have 6 kids, 6 grandkids. and one great granddaughter. Growing up with 5 brothers and 1 sister, we moved quite a bit in our life. But in many cities we lived in, every 2 years we lived in many cities, from Mississippi all the way up to Pennsylvania, to, back to Ohio. And so during that time, we encountered masses of people in our life that we met. We've always taught you, from my mother and father teaching, is to be able to try to understand people and just be the best person you can. And sometimes that worked and sometimes it didn't, because sometimes we all had to do a lot of fighting. And as we was growing up, and we all went to different schools, and all his brothers and sisters, they was graduating, and my brother Roy, Frank, and all of us were still in school. Rockford High School Hall of Fame. I started playing varsity basketball in the 9th grade. So they promoted me the first game of the season. So I started my first game as a freshman, 14, so I played until I retired. So I was number 6, I believe, in scoring, number 2 with steals and assists, you know. And so I played, and from there I got a scholarship from New York at Hillsdale College, baseball there. Then in the Air Force, I played on a basketball.
We are all looking for a place we can call home. We look for home in familiar faces and places, and when we see them, we know we've arrived. We all would say the same thing as it pertained to our parents and the call that God put on Daddy's life as he carried his family up and down the highways to different states and cities, towns and thoroughfares. Sure, we were tired. Sure, we would have liked to settle down. We would have liked to have arrived to some places where we had more friends than foes. But what we discovered was that education would be our safe haven and universities would be our refuge. We learned that from town to town and time to time, nothing was going to love us better or stick closer than your family. In the end, we found out in all of our traveling and all of our packing and unpacking that we weren't in search of a place to live. Because even now, we're still moving, still trying to settle down and get comfortable in this thing called life. No, what Daddy and Mama understood was that they were preparing their children and their children's children to be a part of a story far bigger than themselves, adding to a history that would outlive them, leaving behind the sound and songs of victory and a we shall overcome spirit. And with every word, every verse added to the chapter of our legacy, we see that we are getting closer, closer and closer to a place of great reunion, to a place of joy and peace, where all of our friends and family will be happy to see us when we get there. From Durden and beyond, we are on our way home.